Now the Rebbe now asks a question. What if a person is going to think about the fact and he's going to come to the conclusion as follows? He's living in fantasy land. Do I really view the Eibush as my father? I'm teaching it to you, and I'm asking the question to myself. Yitaka feels the Eibush is his father. I mean, it's pretty awesome. Do not worry about it. Why not? Because the truth is that he is our father. And the truth is, moreover, that our neshama knows that he is our father. And the level of Ava Musateres. In other words, in my neshama, this fact that Hashem is my father and I am his child, Ata Avinu v'anu banecha, or Anu banecha v'Ata Avinu, is true. In fact, the only point is that Shetayelis. In other words, the only issue is that I should experience Eibush as my father. It becomes less than true. So you should know, first of all, it's emes, mitzad the neshama. So don't worry about the fact that your consciousness saying the Eibush is my father. There's a benefit in Yitziyasa ala Gili and bringing forward to revealed state this ahava. Why? Even if you don't mean it mitanemes, the bottom line is, if you think about Hashem as your father, it does come into action. And what is the action? This is the preoccupation with Teda and mitzvahs. Shalema that one learns, and one does. Through this saying to myself, the Eibush is my father, and he says the same words he said at the end of Perek Mem Aleph. To give pleasure to the Eibush, like a son who serves his father. There's two madreges b'klolos. One madrega is that the nafshi, I'm learning to doing mitzvahs for me. Second madrega is kiben the chapis, I'm doing it for the Eibush. Then the Rebbe mentions over there that you could sometimes do Yiddishkeit to help yourself to become closer to the Eibishter, but because you know this is what the Eibishter wants. So he says a similar thing over here, not the same thing, but a similar thing. Even though you're not holding by it, but you'll tell yourself, the Eibishter is my father, so I'm going to therefore learn Torah. It really doesn't matter whether you mean it or you don't mean it. The bottom line is you'll learn Torah. And he goes back to a point mentioned in Tanya Perek Zayin. This also is included in the Maimah Chazal. The Gemara says, "Machshava teva kadosh baruch hu mitzarfa l'maisa." That a good thought, Hashem connects, and the word tziruf means He corrects. L'maisa, in linking it to a deed. Le'yayis gatvin le'parach hakanal. It should be wings that it should ascend upwards. And what's the point of this? What's the Rebbe trying to say? Machshava teva kadosh baruch hu mitzarfa l'maisa. What's the Rebbe trying to say? That normally the seder is his bonus, avas Hashem yiras Hashem, and then comes asiyah. You think about the Eibishter, you develop feelings for the Eibishter, and then you act. For you to think about the Eibush and develop feelings that a son feels for his father, the Alter Rebbe says it could be a dimyat. Doesn't matter. Why not? Because, first of all, it's true in the neshama. Second of all, the bottom line, you'll learn Torah. In other words, you did what a son does for his father, with or without the feelings. So the Chazal say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzvah L'maisa, the Eibush fills in the fact that your actual feelings, that the Eibush is your father and his son, and you were his son, are not entirely credible. In Tanya Perek Zayin, the Alter Rebbe spoke about this in a more basic way. If a person thinks about Hashem, his bonus, doesn't develop Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, but he does mitzvahs, L'maisa, the Eibush says, I'm going to give you the midas. I'm going to be mitzaref. I'm going to make a correction in your hisbonenus. I'm going to make a link between your moyach and your asiyah, as if the lev is there. A yid is thinking about the Eibush, he's his father, but he doesn't mean it. But he learns Torah, but pale, the Eibush is mitzaref. What's the nature of this pleasure that a yid gets? That the Eibush gets through a yid learning Torah, based on the thought that Hashem is my father and I am his child. It's kemashal, like for example, Simchas HaMelech, the joy of a king. Mebnei of a son, Shabbat Elav, which has come to him, which he got out of jail. Kaniskel, as we had earlier in Perek Lamed Aleph, and I think we also had it in Perek Mem Aleph. Or on a higher level, that a person should bring the Eibush Dira. The point is this. In Tanya Perek Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe spoke about Simcha. But over there, what was the Simcha? Over there, the Simcha was for you. You're trapped in Golus. It's like a son of a king who's not in this shafal mutal ba'ashba teichem beis asur, and then when he returns to his father, the king, there's a gewaldige simcha. That's what Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Perek Lamed Aleph. When you do Yiddishkeit, it's a redemption. It's a Yetzias Mitzrayim. It gives you great joy. Here, it's a different. The philosophy is the same, but the point is different. You're giving your Eibush the great simcha when the prince comes home. The prince is happy to be free, and his father is happy to see him. So in Perek Lamed Aleph, he focuses on the prince's happiness in being free. Here he focuses on the king, the Eibush, rejoicing in the fact that his child, a Yid, is free by learning Torah, and he goes out of his imprisonment. Stop. So this is the end of the second hisbonenus. You're thinking in terms of the Eibishter being your father, which is a very, very high madrega. It's madrega of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Alter Rebbe says, even if it's not 100% real, that's fine, because the bottom line is you learn Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzvah. And now the Alter Rebbe is like this. V'hine. We've just discussed two different madregas of ahava, both of which the Alter Rebbe says are shavuot l'chol nefesh miYisrael. Top of page Samach Gimel Gimel. Every Jew has it. Why? Because this is not an ahava which is being created through the hisbonenus. This is an ahava which exists in the pintel yid, in the nishramim. And the hisbonenus are simply revealing it, right? The first one is nafshi v'sicha b'layla, which means I realize Hashem is my life, chayim amitim, and I want my life. And the second one is Eibush is my father and I am his child. So now the Rebbe goes back to talk about these two as a klal. And he says like this, V'hine. Even the first madrega, where a Jew wants God because the Eibush is his life. It's very near to a person. To bring it forward may help from a hidden state, to a revealed state. When a person thinks about the Eibishter and learns about the Eibishter, and he recognizes the Eibishter is Kehem Chayenu, Hashem gives us life, it's relatively easy to reveal that you should love Hashem as He is your life. And the implication from these words is that for sure the ahava, that the Eibishter is your father, is possible, although the Eibishter is your father is a higher madrega. But if you cannot reveal the Avat Hashem that He's Nafshi V'Sicha, He's your real life, or the Eibush is your father, says Afabakain, nevertheless, you could still learn Teira and do mitzvahs Lishman. Lishman means you're doing it not for yourself, but for the Eibush V'Yachol. By visualizing this idea of love in your mind, in other words, you tell yourself intellectually, Hashem is my chayes, Hashem is my life, and I therefore want to do Yiddishkeit, not for me, but for the sake of the truth of my own living. And a good soul Hashem connects. So it's interesting how the Alter Rebbe operates. He starts with Nafshi V'Sicha B'Layla, then he goes on to talk about the Ava of Av and Ben, and he says that if a person does his bonus in these two madregas, it's metanemis, but then he works backwards. He says the Av and Ben, if you didn't do it completely, don't worry, and then he goes backwards, says, and the Av of Nafshi V'Sicha, if you don't mean it sincerely and completely, don't worry about it for the same reason, because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzvah l'maisa. It seems like the Alter Rebbe is not going with a seder. He starts with Nafshi V'Sicha, changes to Kibra De'ishtadl, and then he explains Machshava Teva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzvah by Bra De'ishtadl, and then he goes back to Nafshi V'Sicha to again explain even Kibra Machshava Teva. So I don't know what the pshat is. But you understand Machshava Teva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzvah l'maisa. You're thinking in a certain way about Hashem, even if you don't truly feel that way. First of all, in your neshama it's emes. Second of all, if the bottom line is you learn Torah and do mitzvahs, the Eibusher says, I'm going to consider it like as if you had the midah, because you did the act, you did the Torah and the mitzvahs.